come and see me. But yeah, we're gonna get started now. So if everyone can just pay attention to Srijay. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, there we go. Hello, everyone. All right. Oh, your whole punches. We'll get those done.
Yeah. So I was like,
Okay. Hello, welcome to everyone here. My name is Srijay. I am a super senior journalism major here who has somehow been organizing Technica. But more importantly, I'm a filmmaker. I've directed short films myself. I've written stories, and I've also been in the business school doing consulting projects, etc. So what I'm here to talk to you about is like, what are storytelling techniques that we can use, so that way we can best engage people when we want to teach, when we want to get a point across, and we want to start teaching them. So how many of you have seen Star Wars? Okay. If we look at Star Wars is probably very characteristic of, it follows a very specific style of storytelling, one that's extremely important. And we can divide Star Wars up into three main decisions. Stories revolve around decisions. We care to see what decisions a person makes. So obviously I guess most of you haven't seen Star Wars, but real quick, the few first decisions Luke makes to go is to see, to learn from Obi-Wan. Vader decides to kill Obi-Wan, and the Death Star explodes. And these are three main points, but what they really speak to is what's called the 3-act structure. This is really crucial, and we'll see this in a lot of stories. But if you want to engage someone, if you want to tell the most effective story, what you need to understand is this 3-act structure. It starts with your setup. You know, if we give like any event, anything that you do, there's always that moment, like the calm before the storm. But that first decision is where your action starts to rise. And you know, where rising action stakes get high, we'll get to the confrontation. This is the meat of your story. This is your second act, is, you know, the hero has moved from their normal life to making a decision that moves them into uncertainty, that moves them into an area with stakes. And if we see this, if you ever heard a startup founder tell you about their startup, and especially when they're telling you about the story of their startup, they'll be like, so I was there and I was sitting in my bedroom and I was thinking, and I had this idea, and I was like, would it be really cool if, or we'll take Facebook, right? Zuckerberg was like sitting in his room, and he was like, wouldn't it be really cool if we could have face smash, right? It's like hot or not or whatever, right? And that's like the first decision, right? And that's where like that, it's all that lead up into that first decision where things start moving. And that movement is where we start getting into your rising action. This is, again, meat of your story. And we get to the climax of the film. The climax of the film, or the story, is where the people change. Because we care to see change. We care to see how is that decision to enter this new world made them change. And then, you know, that's like the conclusion, all the stuff we're wrapping up loose ends and stuff. Okay, how many of you are familiar with Hunger Games? Okay, cool. So if I were to ask you, what do you think the introduction, the setup, this first point at which things turn in the Hunger Games is, what do you think that is?
When Katniss volunteered.
Exactly. She's just changed where she's coming from. What would you say is indicative of like our climax of the film? Yeah, what would you say is the climax of the film? There's 2 points in which she changes, but yeah.
The part where like in the holidays, they do it.
Yes, well, that's part of it. So it's really, that's like the climax where we see change in character. We see what all this has manifested towards. That's when her and Peta take the berries together, right? So if we look at Hunger Games, what are examples and stories? You know, we see Hunger Games. This is, you know, Act 1 concludes with Katniss making that decision. Act 2, really, this is where she's like becoming more disillusioned. We see the disillusion when the death of Rue, and then the berries. That's like our Act 3. So understanding that when you are telling any story is something that will help you a ton. We find this everywhere. And by everywhere, I literally mean even at Technica. I'll give you 2 examples. One, have you ever heard an organizer talk about organizing Technica? You know, we'll talk about, so that our whole Act 1 is just the months leading up to this. Opening ceremony, that's where we've changed from, oh, we're just organizing this to like, we're actually running the event. Our climax, that's just expo, when you guys are demoing. Our stakes are rising and rising till we can get you to that demo spot. But even if you look at, how many of you are on a hacking team right now? Okay, how many of you have worked in group projects, teams, et cetera? All of you, right? So have you ever seen forming, storming, norming, performing, adjourning? Okay, it's a great way to describe how teams work. Forming is your whole team is getting together. We're just about to start. Storming is like, when you're in a team, everyone wants to go in different directions, right? So that's your storming. That's like, we've made the decision, we're in this team, we're continuing. And that's actually when your team is at its worst, because everyone has a way that they want to go and everyone has their own ideas of how they want to do things. But slowly, you start to norm. Everyone comes to one point where we're like, okay, we've gone our different ways, and now let's come back together. If your team can make it past this phase right here, and again, we've made the decision to move, it still follows the same 3-act structure. Norming, we're performing, we're all working well together. Perform is the final thing, and the performance is your climax of the film. So there's another tool that we use called how many of you watch Community? No one's watched Community? Thank you. Okay, first of all, Community is one of the greatest shows to ever exist. It's extremely well written. It's on Netflix. But it was written by a guy named Dan Harmon, who, if you've seen, he is also Rick and Morty. He co-created Rick and Morty. He articulated what we talk about writing into his story circle, and this is how you can easily write a story. And if you ever have to tell a story, this is what you can use. You start with the zone of comfort. Hero is generally just vibing, just chilling. They want something, and so they enter an unfamiliar situation. Adapt. I mean, this is not something I'm going to go too into detail in, but it's something that you should, if you're ever looking to write a story, literally all you do, you take these, you write like a sentence for each one of these parts in the story circle, and then you can flesh that out into a full story, and you have everything you need. So that is how we construct a story. But let's start bringing things to presentations. Now, when I want to present something, I want to engage the audience. There's lots of tools that we can use. So this is a little pivot from storytelling more into like how this becomes relevant to what we're doing. So how many of you plan on demoing tomorrow? Okay. You're going to be talking to judges. Okay. And this is part of what I'm here to do, is how to prepare you for a judge. So let's go back to our first act structure, right? You're gonna come to a judge, like, hi, I'm so-and-so, I'm here at Technica. We wanted to do this. That's my introduction. We're right here. We wanted to do this. Then how did we get to that point? Or what did we do? How do we get to that point? What do we do? These are tools that you can use. But even when we're giving a presentation, there are lots of tools in our arsenal that we can use that help us be effective presenters and engage the audience. Number one is to concisely present your central question or your central purpose. We write a thesis statement in all of our papers. It's our main assertion. I'm here to write this paper because this. I'm here to tell you guys that storytelling is useful because it'll help you present to other people and engage your audience. Make sure to explicitly present your central question. For Technica, how might we create a hackathon oriented towards underrepresented genders in tech? It's a question that guides your mission statement and guides the purpose of this presentation. The next thing we want to use is personal connection. So it's a great way to engage an audience is through giving them someone to connect to. This is something I was just presenting on. And so what we wanted to do is we wanted to tap into the inner child in everyone. So the opening of our presentation goes, have you ever been a kid climbing in a tree? You know, you just want to get to the top and just have a good time sitting in the trees. That's the same sensation that young kids experience when they're bouldering or rock climbing. That ability of knowing I was able to climb all the way to the top, have that exhilaration and make it. And so for this, I'm working on a documentary short and we're studying young families who boulder and kids who boulder in the DMV area. You can also see someone else for someone to empathize with. So this is from another project of mine. Meet Brian the buyer. Okay, he buys and sells inventory for a company. And he buys and sells inventory from HP, Microsoft, Dell to places like Target, Amazon, Walmart, and Best Buy. You are understanding Brian. And Brian has two main goals. This was another presentation I had to give, and we were talking about, it was a business presentation in consulting. So this helps center your audience on someone. Some other things that we can do. Pattern interrupts. Change things up. Show a video. So just change the pace up. Have some kind of dynamic activity. Activities is another great thing you can use in presenting and storytelling to engage your audience. But another important thing is subversion of expectations. So we all expect certain things, and the moment our expectations are challenged, the moment I might go into a workshop and be like, I expect to learn this. And if I come out learning more than what I expected, that's something that really engages your audience. A call to action is really great. So my call to action to you, check me out. If you want to see. Huh? How many years ago do you think that photo is? Nah. It's December 2020. Yeah. I was a junior. Now I'm a super senior. But the last thing is withholding information. If you want, and a very important thing when we're telling a story is to control the flow of information. Don't tell everything all at once. Because if you tell everything all at once, what is the purpose with which they stay? These tools are very important tools that you can use in your time telling stories. Let's bring it back to our demos that we're going to be doing tomorrow. You don't want to tell everything to your judge at the beginning. Save a feature in your project for the end. So you can say like, we built a couple features, there's one more. And these are different tools that you can use to keep your judges engaged. again, as we come back to with subverting our expectations. If you have that bonus feature in there, that is not something that your judges would expect, that's a great way for you to bring it out, to hide that bonus feature. And then at the end, be like, by the way, this exists. And if you show that to them, they have gone in with one thought and then you change their, people like to have their expectations challenged. Have you ever been in an interview? They ask you, do you have any more questions for us? The interviews that stand out are the people who ask questions that get them talking, the interviewer talking. You ever make someone talk about themselves? They're the happiest person in the room. Questions like, why do you like this company? Why have you stayed with this company for so long, etc. You know, that's a great way to engage people. That's a great way to subvert expectations. I expect whenever I'm interviewing for someone, I expect them, do you have any questions for us? No, thank you. Or like, when will you get back to me? Those are boring questions. Get the person talking. That's going to change their expectations. If we're talking about that, you know, when we get back to your demos again, see if you can create someone for the person to empathize with. That could be, you could be facing this problem. I was facing a problem with finding a midway point between me and someone to meet, my friend to meet. So I built tell a story. You know, my friend and I, one day we wanted to meet up and we were an hour apart from each other, and we wanted to meet at some point that was like half an hour from each other. So it's fair. But we were just looking at Google Maps and like zooming in, trying to see where we could go. So we built something that takes your map route and finds a midway point right there. You've told a story, you've engaged them, and then now let's say, and so we found this place. And one more feature we have is that it will tell you when it's time for you to leave and when it's time for them to leave. So you'll arrive at the same point based on traffic data. We've subverted expectations now. So yeah, those are some of the ways that we have storytelling techniques that we can use in our demos tomorrow. And yeah, that's all I have for you guys. Anything, questions or anything? All right, cool, we're done.
Yeah, thank you guys all for coming.